if you have a question for Coach Campbell, please use the raise hand button in your participant menu. And our first question this week will come from Randy Peterson of the Des Moines Register. Go ahead, Randy.
Matt, you got 8 freshmen to my count, maybe more than that, in on Saturday. How are the true freshmen? I'm talking about true freshmen now. How are the true freshmen doing? Would you say overall?
I think they've been exceptional. I think this group has been a really neat group, a group that has certainly come in here under very different circumstances. I think for every one of our true freshmen, this has been a really challenging experience, and it's a challenge anyways as a true freshman. But to go through it, the way they're going through it, I think it's certainly been unique. But what I would say, it's such a credit to the culture that our senior leadership and the upperclassmen have provided that I really think it's almost been a seamless transition in a lot of ways. And I think the growth and development, maybe my favorite part of what I saw at the end of the game is the standard of what we play and want to play with was continued by a lot of really young, talented players who have really just kept getting better as this season has gone. And so I think that's exciting for all of us. I think a very talented group of young men that I think will have a huge impact on this program.
Matt, a week ago, Kleiman said that part of the reason for the most recent coronavirus outbreak at Kansas State was because of true freshmen. I'm assuming it happened when the varsity guys, when the main guys were on the road playing a game a couple of weeks ago, whenever it was. How do you know that you're true freshmen and the people and the players that don't travel? How do you know they're continuing to stay on the straight and narrow when they could, revert to being true freshmen in college?
Yeah, I don't know if you do. And I think at the end of it, you hope that they're willing to stay the course. I think that's why our sport's special, because it is football team. It's not football individual. And, our sport is, if you want to do anything, especially at a place like ours, where it's going to have to be everybody going at the same place at the same time. And, I think the buy-in and the value of our young people in our program and, the young people that don't get instant gratification of getting on the field right away, those young men have continued to develop as much as anybody in our program. So I think those things have certainly been positive. And, again, when you're talking about positive tests and what those do, and those are hard, and because sometimes those can come out of nowhere, and you can't control everything. I think what we've really worked on is trying to control what we can control, and I think for the most part our kids have done a really good job of that.
Thank you, Matt.
Mm-hmm.
Our next question comes from John Schaefer of WOI. Go ahead, John.
Matt, how much, if at all, do you talk to your team about the gravity of Friday's game? Obviously, the goal is, one, beat Texas, but bigger picture, Big 12 standings, you guys are right there at the top, and a win Friday would basically lock you into that.
Yeah, I really don't think we've talked about it once. I think, again, the reality of who we are is not steering away from what's allowed us to become successful. And, what that has been is been the ability to grow as the season's gone on, the ability to understand, you play one play at a time, one game at a time, and there will be a team at the end of the season that has had the ability to continue to grow. What's hard, and again, we're dealing with 18 to 22-year-olds sometimes, and even sometimes as coaches, is you can lose sight, and you can start to be distracted from what's most important. And that part becomes really hard. And so, especially at a time like this where it's the holidays and you've got so many things going around and you are getting closer to the end of the football season. But I think one thing I really have appreciated about our group is the ability to just focus on one play at a time, focus on one day at a time, and continue to grow and get better. And I know a lot of that's cliche, and I know I've said that a lot of times, but I really firmly believe that that's the only way you can become the best version of yourself. And again, especially here at a program like ours where development and growth is the only way that we can truly have success.
And then on that note, how much did that week one loss to Louisiana shape the identity of this team to what we're seeing on the field right now?
Yeah, I think there's so many things that have really shaped it. Obviously, there's a lot of factors around the early part of the football season of who we were and what we were. And I think the key was never about winning or losing early. It was about growing and getting better and finding out some of the changes that we're all working through in terms of what we had to deal with in March and April and May, in terms of making sure we were building and doing right by the players for the long haul of the season. So I'll be honest with you, I really think there was a lot of things at the end of last football season. I think us coming back here in January, February were really big, and there's a lot of things we grew from. I really felt like even the pandemic and working through those times, a lot of growth. And so I think a lot of really all of that culminates into some great experiences that we've been able to have this fall so far, and the ability to learn from them and continue to grow from them. And I would certainly say, that first game allowed us a lot of growth opportunity coming out of it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Our next question will be from Michael Swain of 247 Sports and Cyclone Alert. Go ahead, Michael.
Hey, Coach. It's obviously a short week for you guys. I'm just wondering if you could walk us through what maybe the week of practice looks like, dating back from Sunday through Thursday.
Yeah, from us, we were, very typical Sunday. We weren't on the field with our kids. Our kids did a lot of, taking care of their body on Sunday. We certainly got rid of the football game from the Kansas State game and then moved ourselves on. Monday was a walkthrough. And then, today will be, probably what would be our biggest practice of the week. And then obviously tomorrow would be a very similar Thursday practice prior to, Friday being a walkthrough and then leaving. So, a little bit different, but all things that, are unique to a week like this.
And then, I guess, specifically, how does it change maybe the way you approach the week, not having, that extra day of practice throughout the week?
I think you're late in the season, no matter how you approach it. And I'll constantly say this. I think the health and safety of our football team becomes priority number one. And, I think that the schematics are the schematics, but it's more about the fundamental, the techniques, and the health and safety of our players at this time of year. And those are things that, it's our job and responsibility to take great care of our kids so they can be at their best when their best is needed.
Thank you.
Our next question will be from Mike Kloss of the Cedar Rapids Gazette. Go ahead, Mike.
Matt, I think people in my business are inclined to maybe look at this week's game and compare you to Texas in terms of a lot of different things on and off the field. Do you compare yourself to Texas or any other programs for any reason? If so, who? If not, why not?
Yeah, I don't think we compare ourselves to really anybody out there. I think we're a unique entity. I think from our standpoint, just in terms of, where our program is, I would say in a lot of ways we're a very young football program, learning and growing by the day. And, a lot of that is, certainly you look at, our starting point and kind of starting back at square one and rebuilding and, a lot of the lessons and growth processes that we have gone through, even though it's been now going on our fifth year, everything almost seems and feels like the first time. There's not, hey, let's go back to so-and-so year and this is how they did it or this is how they did that. I think there's certainly been a lot of great beacons of hope along the way here at Iowa State that we've been able to reflect back to and hear from. But I think the biggest things is at times we're kind of navigating uncharted water. And so, I think when you're doing that, you kind of got to have very little ego, have the ability to self-reflect across the board, players and coaches, and then try to navigate what's the best way to move forward. And I really feel like whether it's been within a season or really from year to year since we've been here, that's really been our approach.
Our next question will be from Ben Visser of the Cedar Rapids Gazette. Go ahead, Ben.
Hey, Coach, you brought in Mick McCall in the offseason as your running backs coach. What has he meant to the development of Breece Hall?
Yeah, in some way you'd say Mick's the luckiest guy in the world, in terms of that aspect of it. But, I think what Mick has brought in general has brought just a sense of, poise and calm in terms of, a veteranness voice within our coaching staff. And, those things have been hugely positive and, I think still powerful for a guy like Breece is, was recruited, by Coach Shieldhouse, coached by Coach Manning, and so, I think just continuing to add comfort and value to Breece, and really the entirety of our football staff and team.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Our next question will be from Chris Williams of Cyclone Fanatic. Chris, unmute yourself and go ahead.
Yeah, Coach. I know how much value you put into year-to-year growth and just the evolution of your football program. I guess my question is, you had a game in Austin a couple years ago that was towards the end of the season, didn't go the way that you wanted it to. But I'm just curious, when you sit back and look at where your program is right now, compared to where you were 2 years ago, how would you describe the growth to somebody who maybe hasn't watched every game like we have?
Yeah, I just think the biggest thing, would be, I think at that time, we were babies, we were just evolving and, everything was so brand new. And, I think those moments and those games were, there was just such highs and lows throughout all of those things. And, whether it was the next game or who you were playing. And, I think now I feel like there's a really good rhythm to the entirety of our program, from day to day, from game to game. There's an expectation and a standard that I think we want to live by and work really hard to play by when we have the opportunity to play the sport. And I feel like we're a lot closer to that type of program today than maybe we were, even the last 2 years, to be really honest with you. And, I think people see positive results and there were growth, certainly. But I think the growth that's really happened over the last really 9 months has been a lot more internally and allowed us mentally and physically to work really hard to become the best we can be, rather than just in the sport of football. And I think there's a lot of ways we've grown immensely and probably more than we ever have in our program.
Thanks, Coach.
Yeah.
Next question will be from Matt Bellinson of the Iowa State Daily. Go ahead, Matt.
Hey, Coach. I know obviously, whether it's offense or defense, it's not just based on one player, but when you turn on the film and you've watched games so far this season, what stands out about Joseph Osai and, the type of season that he's having and really the career that he's had at Texas, and what kind of threat is he going to pose to your offensive line on Friday?
Yeah, I think the word is elite. He's an elite football player. He's got an elite motor, and in a lot of ways, he has the ability to change the game, and you've seen it happen almost each and every game. And I think Texas is one of those teams where there's a lot of high-end elite football players across the board, and it's why they're such a talented and good football team. But can continue to be impressed every time you turn the film on and you watch how he plays and the consistency in which he plays.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Our next question will be from Travis Hines of the Ames Tribune. Go ahead, Travis.
Excuse me, you said on Saturday this week might be the greatest challenge that you guys have had as a program. And I'm curious, I know it's early in the week, but have you seen or do you anticipate seeing either a different kind of energy or a different sort of urgency from your team to try to meet that challenge?
No, I don't want our kids to change at all. What they've done has been exactly what I needed them to do, to be really honest with you. I think the greatest challenge is it's a different challenge for our players in terms of a lot more mental preparation rather than physical preparation. coming from a short week into a football game, and obviously an early football game. And I think the greatest challenge probably is on us as coaches, just because you lose an entire day and probably a day and a half of game planning. So I think the urgency has been more on us as coaches than it is certainly on our kids, because our kids have done everything we've asked them to do really through the long haul of the season.
Thanks. Our next question will come from Mark Freund of WHL. Go ahead, Mark.
Hey, Matt. You've spoken in the past about Jack Trice and the legacy that he's left at Iowa State. I don't know if you're aware of this, so if you haven't heard of it, that's totally fine. But was just curious if you were aware of the scholarship that George Trice is trying to get launched, and the foundation that he's really trying to make a big deal here, the Trice Legacy Foundation. It's not for like a football player, an athlete, or anything like that. It's just for a general student wanting to go to Iowa State. But I was just curious if you had heard about that at all, or what you know about it.
I have not heard about that up until this point. Now, I will say that there has been some powerful things that have occurred in terms of scholarships and things that have happened more maybe internally in the athletic department world over the last month and a half to 2 months that revolves around obviously Jack Trice and his legacy. So certainly we have seen a lot of really positive, really exciting things beginning to happen. But from that standpoint, I have not heard and would not be knowledgeable enough to be able to comment on that.
Sure. Yeah. No, I understand. That was my hunch, but I wasn't sure. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Our next question will be from John Schaefer of WOI. Go ahead, John.
Matt, what kind of challenges come from preparing for a Texas team that's had 20 days off and is rested, etc.?
Well, I think when you turn the videotape on and you watch every one of their position groups, run around, and the type of talent and team that they have is really all you need to do, in terms of your awareness of what you're about getting ready to play. I think offensively, an elite group of wide receivers, in my opinion, one of the great leaders at the quarterback position in our conference and competitors, a veteran offensive line and a really talented backfield. And then, you flip over defensively and, it's veteran, it's dynamic, as big and talented of a defensive front as we'll have faced, veteran group of linebackers and a really good defensive backfield. So, what we're preparing for is you're preparing for, in a lot of ways, some of the best that we've seen all year. So, great challenge for us, but that's what you want this time of year is great challenges.
And Charlie joked that you would just allow them to practice all the time. It's just not fair when you get an extra bye week because you would love to keep practicing and practicing. How much do you love practicing versus game day?
Yeah, for me, that's my favorite because I can see and watch the growth. And, I think game day is awesome. And, I know that's what our sport is about, is those really special opportunities. In our sport, there's only 12 guaranteed to you. And obviously in a year like this, that it's down to 10. But, I think for me, that's where I feel like a little bit of our sanctuary is it's like your classroom, and you get to grow and you get to watch young people grow and develop habits to really become the best version of themselves they can be. And that's where all those things are won and developed. It's not on game day. Obviously, game day is what everybody gets to see some of the results of. But, I think the greatest growth and the greatest moments actually come out on the practice field and sometimes in the video room.
Our next question will be from Ben Visser of the Cedar Rapids Gazette. Go ahead, Ben.
Hey, Coach, we've talked quite a bit about Sean Foster this year and Daryl Simmons and Jake Remsburg and stuff, but what has Colin Newell meant to your offensive line as sort of the anchor in the middle there?
Yeah, I think the word you just used is probably as well said as anything, is he's the anchor. And, Colin is really, really a special young man. He's a young man that is an incredible leader. He's a young man that has loved Iowa State from the first day that I had the opportunity to meet him. And, one of the things that I knew about Colin is Colin would someday become the best version of himself that he could be. And, he faced some really tough adversity a year ago, which I think is really hard for a young player coming off of what would have been a really, really good redshirt freshman year, started every game at center. And then to lose him and miss a season, that's hard. And I'm just so impressed with not just how he came back from the injury, but how he's been able to lead and demand a sense of consistency and demand a sense of standard within that offensive line room. And I think Colin's a young man that's held that standard from the day he's been back and really from January on. And I think what's happened is a lot of those guys have risen to his level of success and preparation. So really proud of him, and he's been outstanding for us.
Did you see him raise his standard or maybe go into a new role when Trevor Downing went down with his injury?
No, because I would say, to be honest with you, he was that guy before, Trevor went down. I think obviously there was two of them, but, I think Colin, that's what I love about Colin Newell is that there's been no change in Colin Newell. You've just seen growth, but he's always demanded the best of himself, and he's cared so much that he's had this unique ability, even as a young player, is to demand the best of others around him. Obviously it was great to have a partner in crime in Trevor to start the season with the experience that Trev had. But, that's what I love about Colin. He's been the same guy every day, and I think that's why you see him playing at such a high rate for us.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Our next question will be from Jet Beecham of KGAN. Go ahead, Jet.
Hey, Matt, these games always tend to be really, really close with Texas and Iowa State. And you guys obviously winning on a last-second field goal last year. What do you think it is about this series, especially while you've been here, that makes it kind of this chippy rivalry and always seems to be a close one, at least towards the end of the game?
Yeah, I don't know. For me, there's just certainly a great deal of respect for, Texas, their program. Obviously, the tradition there, as good as anybody in college football. And so, I think from our end of it, just trying to continue to grow and get better one year at a time and one game at a time. But, that's what's funny about our sport. Every game can be different and unique. But, obviously that's an interesting question because that's not one that I would have known the answer to.
And those are all the questions we have for you this week, Coach. Thanks for your time.
Okay, thanks so much.